Yes, he did.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Well, the governor of Missouri spoke to the state, and we'll talk about it on this edition of Donnybrook. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's meet those who are assembled around the big green table for this edition, starting with the news director for the Big 550 KTRS and the media veteran, Wendy Wiese. One of our founders from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Bill McClellan. Another founder, now with the Riverfront Times and the Big 550 KTRS, Ray Hartmann. And from 97.1, the Dave Glover Show on FM News Talk, as well as the St. Louis American, STLMag.com, and 590, Alvin Reid. Ray, we're going to start with you. How many State of the States have you been through? Quite a few.
I wrote, or I drafted
Did you really?
a couple, but yeah.
For Governor Kit Bond at
yes,
the time,
yes.
in a previous life.
Helped him return to the private sector.
So, as a former writer of State of the States for a governor of Missouri, how do you think Governor Mike Parson did this week?
I thought it was a really good speech, but it looked like it was drafted by Nicole Galloway's people. I mean, the takeaway from it, and I mean, he said all the nice things about getting along because he's a nice guy, but the takeaway, headlines at least, were he was going to fight against Medicaid expansion, and he was kind of soft in the direction that a lot of us would like him to be on maybe loosening some gun rules in the city. Those were the two biggest takeaways. I don't know if they got internet service, but in 2018, the Republicans across the nation got it. The only reason the Democrats really pounded them was on health care. And being against Medicaid expansion, besides being morally wrong, is fiscally wrong, and it's like it's on a platter for Nicole Galloway. And on the guns, I think he risks getting a primary opponent if he shows weakness on NRA issues.
Ray, I think it's all wishful thinking on your part. You know, the Republicans have opposed Medicaid expansion in Missouri, and they keep winning.
That's the red meat.
And the gun thing, you know, there might be some outstate Republicans who go, he sounds soft on guns, but he's going to be running against Nicole Galloway. So
Who's
I mean,
really soft on
yeah.
guns.
So I don't think he hurt himself at all, and I wish Nicole Galloway well, but I didn't read his speech and go, my gosh, this is good for Nicole.
Well, you know, I hate to agree with Ray at least too much, but I think that in terms of Medicaid, I know some businessmen, but I also know some individuals who are not working right now, and I'll see them this weekend, and they're not working because they're afraid of losing their Medicaid. And I think it's really hurting the state. Now, I know that's one issue, and I'm not sure how many people agree with me on that one, but I think there would be more people in the workforce working for local businesses if they could work and not lose their Medicaid.
And we rank #1 by exponentially in the number of kids that have been kicked off, and the number of people, but including kids that have been kicked off of Medicaid, and it is a Democratic talking point. And if I'm the Republicans, you know, there's only like 13 states now that haven't done the Medicaid expansion. It was fine as a when Obama, when they were running against Obama and they were making it political.
But you're talking about the state that had the lowest tax on cigarettes. I mean,
I get it, but it's a Democratic talking point.
It could be, but like you're saying, we're, you know, we're 48th in most things. Right. So being like 37th, you said 13, we're only one of 13 states. That's mean we're in the, you know, we're hopefully 37th.
Right.
That's an improvement for Missouri. So the governor didn't lose
and I don't mean to suggest that I think he's justified in opposing Medicaid expansion. I think it's crazy, but I don't think that in Missouri being crazy like that hurts you.
I do, because a lot of the folks that are affected are rural hospitals and rural people. It's not as much
Josh
of an
Hawley filed a lawsuit, joined the lawsuit against Obamacare, and he still won an election.
And he beat the popular Claire McCaskill, and Eric Greitens, who won the governorship,
and the point
was against the expansion of Medicaid. But speaking of Eric Greitens, there was a column in Real Clear Politics this week suggesting that he was a big victim of evil forces in Missouri, and that who knows, maybe he'll be back on a ballot. Do you guys think that's possible?
And George Soros, don't forget George Soros. He was also a victim of George Soros. The writer mentioned nothing of Eric Greitens' own hubris, you know, being the victim of his own hubris, but he lumped a lot
that
of...
it was really a Republican-led coup.
Right.
Well,
That's
sure,
what I was
sure,
saying.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's all I was going to add was that Democrats did not bring Eric Greitens down. Well, one, Eric Greitens brought Eric Greitens down, but it was because the Republicans wanted him out of office.
I hope he comes back. I mean, it would be a joy for
It would be
everybody in the
great
news
copy.
business.
Yeah, I was going to say it's great for business.
Right.
I keep saying, I keep hearing just from Republicans that he is at least trying to come back. I don't make predictions because they're always wrong, but it is not it is a thing, and it is possible.
All right, Alvin, Reid, another story where we made national attention. In fact, it was the lead story for CBS Radio at 8 o'clock the other morning, and in the New York Times, they pointed out that the circuit attorney of St. Louis is suing her own city over an 1871 so-called KKK law. We're talking about Kim Gardner, who filed suit this week, the same week that she was supposed to be deposed. She brought in like-minded reform prosecutors from around the country to stand on her behalf. And front page above the fold by Tony Messenger in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Does she have a point that forces have conspired against her because of race?
Okay. She was elected. She's the first black circuit attorney in the history of our fair city. White people have rallied against her, don't like her, are mean to her, have just whatever her, okay? I think that lawsuits have their place, obviously. You know, you had to sue for, you know, fair housing and Civil Rights Act and all that, but I keep hearing this is like a civil rights movement kind of thing, and I don't think so. I disagree with this lawsuit in that this is a local spat which you signed on for. Okay, you wanted this position, you won this position, now you fight for this position, and a federal lawsuit is not the direction I would go to. I just think that it's a show, not of weakness, but a show that you're not up to the task. So Jeff Florida is a loudmouth, bully, jerk who says inflammatory things. Okay, if I had $1 for every time I was the first or the only, I probably could retire right now. And this is a slap in the face to those that came before her who said, like, yeah, you know, I'm taking this job and there ain't a black person here. And I'm going to do it well. And when I leave here, I'm going to be better off than everybody I left behind. That's how you approach something like this. And I just don't like it. Fight, win, do your job. That's all we ask. That's all I ask, and it's not getting done.
I was listening to Tony Messenger on the Big 550 and Cha-ching, and he was talking about the fact that there are all of these progressive circuit attorneys, prosecutors around the country, and my take is this, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to have an opinion like this as a white woman in this arena, but progressive prosecutors who want to change things, to my mind, if you're a prosecutor, you should be upholding the law, the laws as written. If you want to right social, societal wrongs, run for office and change some laws. But the circuit attorney's office is not, in my mind, like the fertile ground of activism. You should be upholding the law. Does that make any sense?
It makes great sense because I'm thinking, hey, what is your first and primary job when you are elected as a prosecuting attorney, and that is to send people to jail.
Right,
now,
and you don't
if you
get
want
to
fix
select
all that, but your first job is send people to jail.
Bad guys, right?
That's what you signed on for.
But if you're an activist, to me, you can't be a jurist. You can't be both.
Okay, I do have a different view. I had Kim Gardner on my show for about 30 minutes last night, 35. And I think one of her themes is it's not about her. This is a national, and this is a nationally funded, people should know it's not taxpayer funded. It's a national group of like-minded progressive, you know, you put in air quote, reform, whatever you call it. I'd say she's a disruptor. She did not run for office on the platform, if you like your criminal justice system, you can keep it, okay? She actually ran on disrupting and changing the system, and she is not alone in that. Wesley Bell did it, and it's
he was
interesting.
conspicuous by his absence the other day, wasn't he?
Yes, he
Yeah,
was.
you know,
Yes, he was.
I don't think so.
I think he was.
yeah.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I don't think so.
And I think Wesley Bell is doing a good job and came in as a disruptor. But Kim Gardner is more like Donald Trump. He ran as a disruptor, and he's made the situation worse, I think. And I think Kim Gardner is the same way. And she can't keep a staff just like Trump can't keep a staff. But they both have fanatical followings, and unfortunately, I think they'll both win re-election.
Well,
You know, especially if she's suing the city for, you know, conspiring against her because she's black. Don't forget the public safety director is African American, as is the police
That's
chief.
not, the
So
point
it's
is
kind
this.
of interesting
I think
that she'd be making
I
those.
think it's a statement lawsuit. I don't think it's, you know, necessarily. I don't agree that she shouldn't do it. I don't know.
But then how can, I'm sorry, but how can you say it's a statement lawsuit, but it's not about Kim Gardner? It is about Kim Gardner.
No, it's about
not,
the national. It's about her.
But what's the evidence? What's the evidence? She didn't present that in her document.
It's a law. I mean, you read the lawsuit. It lays out its case.
What is she?
Okay,
Like,
look, I'm
what's
not
the
going to litigate
racism?
it for her. I'm just saying she did it as a state. The
See,
national.
don't you think, though, that she was deflecting attention
No.
from the deposition, which
I do
was
not.
scheduled?
I think this is part of a national movement, and whether you like it or not, and to Bill's point, in August, Mary Pat Carl is running against her again. There's an election in August, and if people want to, you know, for whatever reasons, there's plenty to criticize. The handling the Greitens case, yada yada. That's what the election's for, and we'll see. I do think that the kind of drumbeat against her over 3 years, a lot of it justified, whatever, has galvanized the African American community.
That's true, Ray.
And I'm just saying,
What I'm
I
saying
think
is,
to
okay,
Bill's point,
all right.
she's going to be hard to
My
beat.
argument is, I was elected to this office, and white people are going way out of their way to disrupt what I want to do and to stop me from being reelected. What else is new? I mean, this is not new.
Well, except for the protester at the rally, the African-American woman whose son was killed, and Kim Gardner refused to prosecute the perpetrator. So,
well, I'm just saying that a federal lawsuit, like, honestly, this is about, that's about her. That is not about solving anything in St. Louis.
all right, well,
we
now
need
let's
to see
move
how
on.
it plays out.
Now, we've had Wendy Wiese, 8 kids shot in the greater St. Louis area since the beginning of the year, and the police chief addressing public safety yesterday appeared in front of an aldermanic committee, and he got an earful because the aldermen voted unanimously to increase the districts from 6 to 7. They also want to reduce the number of majors and make some other changes. Some people are wondering if the status quo is working. Obviously, we've got a crime problem. What was your take on all of this?
I thought that just reading, seeing the politicization, they are politicizing the dead kids. And whether they realize that or not, when Chief Hayden was talking about his technology director and how they want to be able to, you know, have all of this information and the data, and it's going to take 2 years. And then there was this, you know, a lot of blowback from some of the aldermen. And my thought was, please spare me any moral high ground, because these dead children, this is nothing new. This is absolutely nothing new. So I think the chief, and by the way, Superman couldn't fix the problems that we have in the city right now, or the crime rate that we have in the city. He has a way that he wants to go about it. Jimmy Edwards has a way, Judge Edwards, that he wants to go about it. But they have to work together. And to Cara Spencer's point, you know, she said that we've got this great old city, but that we're completely dysfunctional. And I think you really saw that during that aldermanic committee.
If there's any hearing in which police officer Rorda and Alderman Muhammad agree,
and
you should stop and say, like,
Just
wait a minute,
stop.
there's probably something to this.
Right.
And, as crazy as he sounds most of the time, Rorda said, like, look, I don't know if this will be the best way to go, but at the same time, what we got right now is not working.
And he said it's going to put more police officers on the street.
And
So-
I
and
don't
also
agree with the characterization that they're politicizing kids.
I agree with you.
I think that we sit here week after week and say we got to do something. Nobody really has a solution. With local control of the police, which we should have, and they're unanimous in this. I think they are as frustrated and as Alvin says, everybody is so frustrated.
Oh, you know what, Ray? I think the local control got out of hand. You know why?
Oh, no, I'm not.
When Lawrence O'Toole was going to be replaced, I think that politically, locally, the mayor had to go with someone local, preferably an African-American chief. And I like John Hayden. I think he's a great guy and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? I think that's one case where local control didn't work because local politics got involved. And I'm told now, if you want a promotion within the St. Louis Police Department, unions are making calls, others are making calls on behalf of people. This local control has its problems.
I didn't mean to get off on
that went on even under state control.
Right.
I mean, the ACE system and where people were calling, the commissioners to help people get promoted. And you know, and back in the old days when I covered the police, they had 9 different districts. And you had little districts, stations in the community, and people could wander in.
Right, exactly.
And then they start talking about community policing, and the first thing they do is consolidate all these districts, and people don't feel comfortable wandering in anymore.
Exactly. And
when I say politicizing, I'm talking about criticizing the chief and the public safety director for saying that it might take a little while because they're trying to follow federal guidelines of tracking crimes and reporting crimes. So to me, that is politicizing. That is grandstanding.
Well, Wendy, didn't it seem kind of ridiculous when the police chief said that his IT person would have the data ready by like 2021 or something? You think, Chief, what do you know,
it absolutely does seem a little bit out of the realm, but at the same time, I think there's a method to what he's trying to do, and for them to criticize and, you know, cross their arms and, you know, kind of show some disgust with the chief.
And by the way, I think that whether Chief Hayden's a good guy, and whether he's doing a good job are two different things. And I personally, I didn't mean to get us off on a local control. My point is they need to do something, and I think the aldermen are absolutely on the right track.
Well, one of the aldermen, Cara Spencer, Bill, threw her hat into the ring this week. She's going to take on Lyda Cruson, and the first thing she said was that public safety is her #1 priority. I think she said picking up trash is a close #2. What do you think about Cara Spencer and her chances?
Well, I don't know about her chances, but I was impressed with this bold talk about St. Louis is well positioned to become the fastest growing city in the country. I thought, St. Louis is? Wow. You know, I mean, I haven't heard that sort of enthusiasm since Vince Shamo was mayor. As far as her chances go, I don't know. I think Tashara Jones, you know, who's been the shadow mayor and is the treasurer, has a leg up on everybody. But I thought Cara Spencer seemed impressive.
I think that there is a fallacy out there that anyone who is a so-called progressive or liberal, they all have black people's, you know, best interests at heart. This is case in proof that is not. About the only thing could stand in the way of Tashara being the mayor is a candidate like Cara Spencer jumping in, and then they'll split that vote, and Lyda Cruson will end up winning the primary because she's not running against Lyda Cruson. She's running against Tashara Jones.
Oh, I don't know.
Cara Spencer has more interest in Tashara not being the mayor, then let me finish, than Tashara not being the mayor, than her being the mayor. This is some more St. Louis nonsense,
let me ask you,
and it plays out the same way every time.
Why wouldn't they be splitting the white vote? I'm talking about Cruson and Spencer.
Oh, no, because it's like two Democrats running against a Republican. It's about status quo running against non-status quo. That's where the vote will split.
Well, it is true. Remember, Cara Spencer, Ray, was the one who was suing the St. Louis Blues along with John Ammon, and then they said to her, look, Cara, if you continue this lawsuit and you lose, we're going to charge you our legal fees. Remember that one?
Yeah, I kind of want to go hide because Tashara Jones is sort of probably my favorite citywide official, and Cara Spencer is my favorite alder person. So I have great regard for both of them. She's, you know, it's America. She has a right to run. I think it's way too early to handicap. I mean, yeah, I think it's fine. She'd make a good mayor, and she has every as much as, it's not like she has any, you know, anything explain as to why she wants to do it. I think as I said, I think she'd be good. I think it's way too early to handicap anything because first of all, we don't know if Lyda Kristen's going to run for re-election.
Well, she's already announced that she is.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Did she announce it?
I was surprised, but yes.
Oh, that's right.
She said she is.
Well, but I mean, whether she's
She
going to stay.
probably did it on Sarah Fenske.
Well, she's going to stay in it.
But
But
I
guess that's
I'm
right.
getting an inferiority complex while I was talking about KTRS.
I still think there's a chance.
I don't blame you.
Hey, Alvin, okay.
My point is,
for the interest of time, let's move on.
I
Alvin,
question her motive.
Missouri troopers, because there's such a shortage of law enforcement officers, nationwide shortage, about 700,000 cops short nationwide. So the state of Missouri has said, look, if you want to be a trooper and you want to have a tattoo, that's fine, just as long as the tattoo isn't displaying a political message or nudity or profanity, but also we can't see the tattoo. So if it's on your forearm, you're going to have to wear long sleeves. What do you think about this?
Well, you can't wear no big, full, like, live out in the wilderness beard, and they tell you got to have your hair cut. I'm with this 100%. Yeah. And I'm biased. I really don't like tattoos, okay? But if I told my police officers, look, you can have a tattoo, but it cannot show, all right? Because, you know, and just don't get a neck tattoo because you ain't going to be a state trooper. That's fine with me. There's First Amendment right to do all kind of things, you know, but as a police officer, I think...
No ink.
No ink.
Well, that's 20th century, man.
You know, the military, the FBI, they're all running into this problem, Alvin, that a lot of young people, and I'm talking about people under, 40, calling them young, have tattoos. And where they used to have this hard rule, no tattoos, like the FBI needs all these computer people. So they're people tell me they're not even worried about drug testing anymore, let alone a tattoo that you can see.
Well, somebody comes in to interview for a job for the FBI and they have like love on this one and hate on this one. I'm like, no, we're not going to have that. I mean, that's true.
Come on, guys. It's 2020.
Yeah,
People have tattoos.
I'm fine with it. I mean, the tattoos, I don't think it's a First Amendment issue. I mean but I think I think anything we can do to it's like on residency, which I mean, broadening the hiring pool for tough jobs like that is what I see, and I don't think that anybody gets too worked up about them.
The troopers aren't allowed to wear chandelier earrings either, like when they're out.
Only on the weekends.
Only on the weekends and in their private time. No, seriously, I think tattoos are. Did I say tattoos? I think that tattoos are fantastic as long as they're not on my children. But yes, absolutely. Cover them up.
Real quick.
Cover them up.
I kind of dismissed my own argument. When I was leaving school, I actually interviewed with the FBI. I got a little thing, said, hey, we'd like to talk to you, whatever. And in it, I just did a little thing. I said, hey, but look, I'm going into journalism, whatever. It said, besides, I'm 5'8", black guy, whatever. And the guy, we had a great little 20 minutes ago, he said, like, Alvin, if all FBI agents were 6'1" white guys, how much crime would actually get solved? So, but still, it's all right to say no tattoos.
Bill McClellan, there's a proposal in Jeff City to eliminate the time limit for suing for child sex abuse lawsuits. It's the statute of limitations. Should the statute of limitations be lifted even though, witnesses die and memories fade and evidence is lost?
Oh, yeah, I personally don't have any problem, Charlie, with allowing the statute of limitations to be lengthened. You seem... No, seriously, the argument that people make resonates with me when they say that, some of these children suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome and have a difficult time remembering. I mean, we've had this in the priest problem, and so somebody comes forward late. And if it's going to be difficult for the person who comes forward late to be able to prove a case, but if they think they can, I think that's fine.
The problem is you come 40 years later with your case, and the defendant is at a huge disadvantage because there might be a key defendant, or rather witness, who has died, or evidence is lost. And let's face it, memories fade.
That's for a jury to decide.
I agree.
That's for a jury to decide.
These people are broken in the worst possible way, and for some of them, they're silenced by their own fear. They're silenced by all sorts of horrific things, and so if you have to lengthen it, lengthen it.
Yeah, and I don't disagree that there's some issues that, in any particular case, it's going to be a difficult proof, but the jury. We don't need legislators artificially narrowing the time frame. It's a
So
jury
you don't like
issue.
statute of limitations at all?
In
I'm
this
really
particular-
surprised at you.
In this particular case, I don't think they should be narrowed. I don't.
This is difficult, you know, and you were setting us up. I can feel that. But anyway, if somebody accuses somebody of doing something to them 50 years ago in Cleveland, all right, and that person has never been to Cleveland. I'm sorry, wrong city.
Boy,
All
you're
right,
really
sorry
making
about
this
that.
tough.
But anyway,
Poor
but that
Charlie
person
had a
has
rough
never been to Cleveland. You would now have to go about proving, I wasn't even in Cleveland. You can't prove that from 50 years ago. And in the meantime, your name is now out there like he did.
Well, there's no statute of limitations on murder, for instance. And you could make all these same arguments about
Well,
that.
there's- I
We
mean,
say
seriously.
murder is the sort of thing there should be no limits on. And I think that if a child doesn't come forward in 6 years or something,
and
then
this
comes
is
forward,
seriously,
that's
this
fine.
is this. If you talk to psychiatrists, psychologists, this is actually a form of spiritual murder. Sorry, I'm just saying. So if it takes 40 or 50 years for somebody to say, to summon up the courage to say, this happened to me, and all of these people look the other way, and I don't want it to happen to somebody else, then I say, God
And if you
bless
weren't in
America.
Cleveland, they can't put you. It's incumbent upon them, Alvin, to prove your
Okay, well,
guilt.
but
with murder, you have to have motive and you have to have opportunity.
All right, and we're going to have to ask for your phone calls on your turn because we're flat out of time for this table's discussion. Let's find out what people had to say about last week's program, starting with Russell Bowles. I've smoked pot for 55 years, and after watching thousands bounce back and forth from drugs, alcohol, and pot, the one thing I do know is if they'd all smoked only pot, they'd all be physically and mentally better off and probably still married. Thank you, Russell. You can write us care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, 63108. Don't forget those emails, letters at ketc.org, and those tweets at #DonnybrookSTL. Listen to us on your favorite podcast source. That'd be Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. And thank you so much for tuning in for this episode, but don't go away because Alvin and I will be reading those tweets and taking your phone calls in just a moment on your turn. Thanks a lot, and don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
It's 61 day. It's 6 the days.
No kidding.
Welcome to St. Louis. Welcome to your turn. Sally in Eureka, we're going to start with you. Hi, Sally.
Hi. I'm calling tonight about the Missouri has cut over 100,000 kids under the age of 6 off Medicaid. And I just think it's ironic that they say that it's too expensive, yet for those same kids, they tax baby diapers at they call them luxury items, and tax those baby diapers at the luxury sales tax rate of 4%. They tax those along with incontinence diapers and feminine protection at 4% as opposed to the 1% grocery rate.
Oh, I see,
Candy and
yeah.
soda are taxed at the 1% rate. So on the one hand, it's too expensive to keep those 100,000 kids aged 6 and under on the Medicaid rolls, but when it comes to diapering those kids, those diapers are considered luxury items, and the state of Missouri taxes those diapers at the luxury sales tax rate.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think that's a luxury because that is the state sales tax of 4.2257%. But very good point that soda is taxed at what, 1%, and the diapers, which are not a luxury, obviously. Great call. Thanks, Sally.
Thanks, Sally.
Before we continue, just want to give a quick shout out to one loyal viewer by the name of Wally Price, who, along with his family, is watching from St. Anthony's Hospital. And we wish Wally a real quick recovery. As we move on to Dave in Defiance. Hi, Dave.
Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the call this evening. I want to make just a couple comments about the prosecutor, Kim Gardner. Sounds like she's a prosecutor that doesn't like to prosecute. Downtown St. Louis, you have a lot of chaos and confusion, and if you would like to really try to stop it, stop and frisk, and you'll get rid of a lot of your problems downtown. That's all I got to say.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the call.
It's not up to her to pass a law of stop and frisk. Now, if it were to pass and she had to uphold with it, it would be nothing to do. But that's not her job. Her job is to convict people once they're already charged with a crime or charge them with a crime. But everything that goes on before that is not in her bailiwick.
You know, the funny thing about stop and frisk, you can use it now. Any police officer in the country can. You just can't racially profile. But what would the charge be if we find someone carrying a firearm? Because let's say you frisk somebody and they've got a firearm. Just about everybody can carry a firearm in this state of Missouri.
Exactly.
So you don't need a permit, really. So
All right.
What are you going to charge them on?
3 tweets. Here we go, Charlie. Kinski 5, the prosecutor's job. Where there's a crime, prosecute it. Where there's a law, enforce it. Where there's a victim, speak for the victim.
And we heard from Craig Riggins. Restructuring the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department won't solve or prevent crime to a level where people feel safe. This crime wave is a social issue and a mental health issue. That's the real core of the crime wave in St. Louis.
And Captain Weil, I spent my entire career as a uniformed first responder, and in my experience, your appearance greatly affects how the public interacts with you. Professionals should look professional. That's in regard to the tattoos, I do believe. Hashtag Donnybrook STL. Send us a tweet. We'd love to read it. David in Park Hills. Hi, David.
Hey, how you doing, guys? I've
Good.
watched you for years.
Thank you.
I would like to speak up on the statute of limitations. Case in point, my own. I was supposed to be admitted into the juvenile facility in Fulton State Hospital in 1969, but they didn't have any papers, and I was put in the maximum security unit, and I was sexually abused, and I have not reported it or anything because I didn't want to embarrass my parents or anything. They've recently passed away, and, would like to get some kind of a news story, not just about that, but the fact that I took out writs of habeas corpus when I did get discharged for patients that they were killing in there, and they were hiding them in graves. There's a whole bunch of things that I know about the institution. But
All right, so what happened to you happened, like, say, 1969, and we just, 50 years ago. I hear what you're saying, that you would like some justice on that, even though it happened that long ago. So I hear you, and you have, like, I think a case that you could probably prove. But
well, who knows?
Yeah. All right.
You know, 50 years ago, that's quite some time. And I will say this, I'm not, first of all, what you went through, I feel very sorry about the troubles that you suffered. But, our whole system of justice is there to protect the defendant. I mean, that's how it started years ago in this country. And the defendant has to have certain ways of defending him or herself with, things like evidence. And evidence can get lost or forgotten. And I appreciate what you've gone through. That seems like a long time ago if it was 50 years ago.
All right.
Our next call comes from Jean in St. Louis. Hi, Jean.
Okay, fine. I'm calling regarding Kim Gardner's case, and we the taxpayers, we pay for everybody's expenses. If Kim Gardner is bringing this lawsuit, who's going to pay for her expenses, and she's suing the city. That means she's suing the taxpayers also, and it's a very trifling lawsuit. Where are the pundits that be around her? They should have told her that you cannot win with that type of a lawsuit because it doesn't have any merit. Because if she was doing her job, nobody would have anything to complain about.
Well, you know, people will complain about her when she's doing her job, whether she's doing it poorly or doing it to excellence, because there's some people that are just opposed to her having that office. But with that being said, you're correct. Now, ultimately, I don't know who will fit the bill for this. But you made an excellent point, Gene. She's suing the taxpayers. If she were to win some $20 million verdict, as in the county, ultimately, the taxpayers of the city of St. Louis would win that. Would have to pay it.
I noticed that she's got some cases where she's been asking for reimbursement from the city for some of her legal action, and I don't know if this one, I'm not sure if she's asking for the city to reimburse her for these bills. Good question, though. Wayne, how you doing, Wayne? You're in St. Louis County.
How are you? I'm not really so sure how frivolous Kim's case is. One of the things I'd like to know, and I think it tells a big story. Why do we have two police unions, essentially? The Ethical Society of Police and then the union at large. Why does that happen? Of course, we know the answer, and I'd like someone other than Alvin to tell me why. Long history of problems here in St. Louis. They're not going to go away overnight. Let's not criminalize or give Kim, or let's lighten up on her. Simple as that.
Okay.
She's trying to do a job. We know what she's facing, and it's real. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank
Thanks
you.
for the call.
You know, the two police unions, if I ran for mayor of the city of St. Louis, one of the first things I would say, like, we're going to have one police union, okay? And I want black people and I want white people to understand what I'm bringing to you as a candidate. We're going to have one police union, all right? Because that's disruptive and that's not getting the job done. My problem, Wayne, with the lawsuit is the lawsuit. Just like you said, oh, yeah, there's plenty of forces do not want Kim Gardner to succeed. Why are you filing a federal lawsuit? You know, beat them. Be good, be better, and beat them. And it's not necessary to go to that extreme. That's just how I feel about it.
You know, technically, we have only one union. There's only one collective bargaining unit, and that's the St. Louis Police Officers Association, and the vast majority of police officers are part of that, but there's also another group called the Ethical Society of Police. Technically, it's not a union, although with verbal shorthand, we kind of refer to it as a union, but it's not.
That's true. Good point.
Who's next?
Dan in St. Louis. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Yes. I was calling. Ray had made a statement about the tattoos and that anything to expand the base of potential hires. And I kind of wondered, why don't we, when we start talking about these different positions, the big argument against hiring people in St. Louis is that they're not qualified. That's why they can't get these people. They're not qualified. That's the big argument that I hear from people. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, why can't we qualify these people? You know, when we wanted people in the service, people didn't want to go and fight a war where they were going to die. We said, okay, we'll give you some educational money. We'll pay for your education. You do the service. Why can't we do the same thing like with the police force, like some places do with school teachers? So we'll give you an education, and you owe us so many years for this education.
Oh, man. Dan,
why can't we do that with people in St. Louis?
That's a good idea, Dan. Exactly. I never thought about it, but we have some really wise callers. That would be tremendous. You get a St. Louis Police Department scholarship where you major in criminology or something like that, but you have to pay for it all if you don't become a police officer for 4 or 5 years. That's a good idea.
It's a great idea.
Hey, Dan, you're the winner so far tonight. Absolutely.
Jeff, you're in Florissant. What do you say, Jeff? Or that was Jeff, right?
No.
This is Jeff.
This is Jeff.
All right. It is. I've been with the state for 20 years dealing with children and adolescents with juvenile corrections and with psychiatric care. And I guess my point is that the kids are put in the middle of the drug war, and they're getting killed with so-called gun violence. But violence is over issues such as the sales that aren't regulated, that we won't regulate. We don't believe in freedom. We really don't, because if we did, we'd allow things to progress and be regulated by law and allow adults to make their own decisions. And if it affects them, to provide treatment for them, and if they don't, get the proper treatment, then they will have problems with their issues. But to put the onus on the kids and have them out there dealing with drugs and holding the street territories and all that kind of stuff, and then call them thugs. I mean, you don't see too many opportunities for employment in the poor neighborhoods. I've lived in them. And the kids are stuck out there, and their heroes are telling them it's good to be tough and hard, and it's very hard to change things without changing that environment, offering jobs, and looking at things systemically. But I think one of the things we need to do is look at freedom.
Well,
and
Jeff,
bring
appreciate
about
the call.
unity, because
Thanks for the call.
Yeah.
I would say, I differ with you on one aspect. The unemployment rate in our area is less than 3% right now. Teenage unemployment is the lowest it's been in 50 years. There are people looking for workers right now, and they're out there. As a matter of fact, the Wall Street Journal, now this is not maybe for teens, but the Wall Street Journal had a piece this week on GH Tool in Washington, Missouri, and they will pay for your relocation expenses if you go work in their factory. So that's the one area I might disagree. I don't disagree, though, with the problem of drugs in our society.
Right. All right, let's go to Jackie in St. Charles. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, good evening, gentlemen.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm calling. I stand with Kim Gardner, and I very much disagree with Alvin. This lady is educated, and they didn't give Jennifer Joyce the same treatment that they give Kim Gardner. All she's trying to do is her job. And as far as the majors, they need to get out on the street. We got too many people that have titles that are not out here helping police the police. So we need them to get from their desk, come out here and help. And again, I stand with Kim Gardner, and I disagree with you wholeheartedly, Alvin.
All right, Jackie.
Because again,
All right, Jackie, let me say this. I never said she wasn't doing her job. What I said was that basically all the arguments she has that what people are doing to her are not new. And the best way to fight this is to beat them. Not federal court or anything like that, is to do your job, do it well, and they will stand down. That's the problem I have, not how she's doing her job. I think she could have done it better. But, hey, why resort to this? I'm better than you. I got elected. I've got a mandate. I'm going to beat you. That's my argument. I don't like the lawsuit. That's all I'm saying. Okay?
Hey, thanks a lot for your call. Sure appreciate it. As we move on to Bill in Rock Hill. Hi, Bill.
Interesting, because I was going to talk about that lawsuit. I really fail to see how the lawsuit is helping Kim Gardner's cause, because crime is just getting completely rampant in the city. And, I mean, it makes me sick when I pick up a copy of the Post-Dispatch and read how many repeat offenders are going out there and, committing the same crimes over and over. And it's just ruining the metropolitan area. And I don't think filing this lawsuit is helping her cause at all. I also think sometimes maybe Kim Gardner is actually in the wrong role, that maybe she should be a defense attorney rather than be a prosecutor, because when you're a prosecutor, your job is to prosecute. It is not to defend. And I think sometimes she's trying to make excuses in that, and it's like, no, you got to get out and you got to prosecute these people, and if they're guilty, they go to jail, and that's that. And if somebody has shown that they don't want to obey the law, that they've been a repeat offender, then maybe they need to stay there, because, I've seen repeated news stories where they've caught people committing different crimes, and this is like their third or fourth offense, and it's like, well, something's wrong here.
All right. Now, keep in mind, Bill, that when you read that and they're third and fourth offenders, most of those people were convicted and let out before she became the district attorney.
I understand.
She doesn't have any point. She doesn't have any control over that. Now, in the future, you might be able to make that argument, but not right now.
And don't forget, there are judges involved, too. I mean,
good point.
It's a little more complicated. But, Bill, we always appreciate your phone call as we move on to Kathy in St. Louis County.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Charlie and Alvin. I appreciate your program. Thank you very much. My comment is I think that Cara Spencer would be a great mayor. I think we need somebody that is enthusiastic about St. Louis. And not only that, I've heard some of the different programs or different entities that she has gotten involved with the gas company and other things, and I think she really wants to move the city forward, as well as good intentions for the state totally. I think we need to have people that are energetic and enthusiastic and very hardworking, like Elizabeth Warren said.
Thank you.
I think Missouri has missed their chances with Governor Clara Caskell. I hope Nicole Galloway gets it too, because
Thanks.
I think.
No, I hear you.
Thanks a lot,
Right,
Kathy. No,
real
appreciate
quick.
it.
Are you still there, Kathy?
Yes.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Tashara is not enthusiastic.
Doesn't love her city?
Doesn't love her city?
Yeah.
No, I didn't say that. I just said that I've heard. I've heard Cara Spencer working on quite a few things. Tashara has also. I just I like enthusiasm. That's all, Alvin. I think it's good to be enthusiastic.
Okay. Thanks a lot. The one issue I do have a little quibble with Ms. Spencer is that recently she was among those who passed the ordinance that doesn't allow guns in city parks. She's calling city parks now daycare centers, because guns aren't allowed in daycare centers. And so now she's going to put up signs and it'll say no guns in this park. And that's to me like saying, hey, let's put up a sign, no icebergs in the North Atlantic. It just, it's a waste of time in my opinion. But we'll see what happens.
All right. Susie in St. Jacob. Hi, Susie.
Hi, how are you?
Just fine.
I just wanted to make a comment about Kim Gardner, and I was wondering, it seems like there's a high percentage of crimes that are pending application of warrant that they're not doing anything with. So I was kind of just wanting to ask, how does that work with the prosecution?
I like
the prosecutor's office.
But I don't know, like you can issue a warrant on somebody, but I think it has to be served and the person has to be brought in or whatever. But if a warrant is issued, that came from her office.
And one of the big questions now is how many cases turned over to her office by the police department has she acted upon? And one figure out of KMOX is 28%, but I think that her people are going to come up with some different figures. And we'll see, but that's important. Has she been turning down cases that have been handed to her by the police department? And that would have a big effect on fighting crime, of course. Who's next?
Diane. Hi, Diane.
Hi, good evening, and I enjoy the show.
Thank you.
I'm calling, and again, probably most of your calls this evening is about Kim Gardner's office.
About 50-50.
The thing that is, I live in the city, I have for 35 years, but what is upsetting is the rate of prosecution, the warrants that are issued, like Charlie just mentioned. Channel 5 on their 6 o'clock news had something this evening, and I believe when they showed the total number of cases that went to their office from the police for 2019, I think the rate was about 23%.
23%.
And that's very, very scary. That and Alvin and the rest of you guys mentioned this evening, that her job is to prosecute, and I don't feel like she feels the same as a lot of the residents do.
Okay.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Diane.
We have some tweets. Do we?
Yeah.
Fight for music. The increase in violent crime in St. Louis is all about guns, guns, guns. The root cause is injustice. Until hashtag Donnybrook STL spends time discussing the problem of guns, the panel is not to be taken seriously.
Not sure what program you watch, but we spend a lot of time talking about guns. RT Popo 09. The number of police districts is not important. The number of police officers and their workload is. Hashtag Donnybrook STL. Still got time. Send us one. Bob in the great city of Kirkwood. How you doing?
Pretty good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
First time I've ever called Donnybrook. I've called Charlie 113 times, but I've never called Donnybrook before. Alvin, I don't know how in the heck you can figure that with the entrance of Carla into the race that it doesn't benefit Tashara Jones. You're just dead wrong. You're a pretty good Democrat, but you ain't got this figured out right. What happens is the two white girls are going to divide up the votes, and then the person that I'm in Kirkwood, so I can't vote. Yeah. That I'm going to back is Tashara Jones. But Alvin, I don't know where you come up with some of that crazy stuff.
All right, here we go. Who is the person that's closest to the Republican that will draw the most South City votes from those precincts that vote Republican in most elections? That's Lida. So Alvin you have two Reid. Progressives probably going against each other.
Yeah, probably Alvin Reid. That's crazy. That ain't going to happen.
All right, Bob. I hear you, man. Good points. Thank you, dude.
Always good to hear from Mad Dog. Who's next? It's Mark in U City. Hi, Mark.
Hi there. How are you?
Great.
I thought, I'm calling about Governor Parson's State of the State address. I thought it was one of the worst speeches ever. There was no aspiration to be great in anything, no big ideas. It was like eating a cold cheese sandwich. And because the Republican-led legislature has given away all of our tax money, I think our state is doomed to be bottom of the pack.
All right. Well, we're in the low 40s already. I hear what you're saying, but that was a speech to get reelected. That wasn't a speech to try to set the world on fire. That was, I want to hold this job. I want to win an election because I got appointed. I didn't win it the first time. So it isn't like you got an incumbent, technically. He's trying to win the election.
Yeah. You know, Missouri's got a long way to go because studies came out this week that we're not growing and our GDP is not comparable to neighboring states. And we do have a tough row to hoe. On to Dennis?
Yes.
Hi, Dennis. Oakville.
Hi, this is Dennis from Oakville.
Hey, Dennis.
I want to discuss the increasing the police precincts. What they don't realize is when they have another precinct, they're going to have people that work in the office and more officers to man that precinct. And it takes more officers off the street.
Fair point.
They need to...
Well, Dennis, this is what I would say. I don't know how many people work in headquarters, and I don't know how many police officers are not on the street because they are in some position that takes them off the street. I think it could be worked out where we eliminate a position here and we fill that position with an on-the-street police officer. I think it could be done. Quite frankly, I think the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department is heavy in administration.
Well, I will say, working downtown, and I hear this from other neighborhoods, we don't see enough police officers. Now, if we got another 120, 130, that would be 20 per precinct or about 7 or 8 per shift. That would help, but I don't know if we'd see enough police officers. Like when you go to Chicago,
everywhere.
They are everywhere. They really are, you know? At Michigan Avenue, there's like 4 on a corner.
Yeah. Same with Memphis down on Beale Street. My daughter goes to school up in the Chicago area, and even as far as Oak Park, all these places here, police are everywhere.
Yeah.
Like if you yelled for the police, a police officer would hear you. We got to get there. Jerry in St. Louis. Hi, Jerry.
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, rather, and Happy New Year to everyone there.
Back at you. Go right ahead.
My two comments are one, this Kim Gardner deal. I've seen it for 40 some odd years that when a black person gets in a certain situation, they bring out that race card, and that kind of irritated me when she did that.
All right. Now, 47 years ago was different. All right, but I hear you.
So let me get to the meat of my second thing.
All right.
When the police come there to ask for applications for warrants or indictments and stuff like that, and they're declined, I think a separate and independent group should be able to look at those and see if the prosecuting office is doing his job or if the police officers are not quite meeting the bar for.
That's a good point.
That's a good point. I hear you.
Very well.
I hear you.
Well stated.
Okay, thank you so much. Hey, see you next week. Donnybrook, your turn. Stay warm.
Thanks, everybody.
Good call.